I'd like to welcome everyone for joining us to our webinar on touchless process. With me today, we've got Craig O'Neill, trainer for our Auto Text Me.
Hello.
We have Mark Seawall, who is our RLO trainer, and Chris Cloutier, owner of Golden Rule Auto Cares in Texas. Today, guys, this is our second webinar in our touchless repair series. Our last webinar, we discussed what touchless repair is and why it's good to have a touchless repair process. This generated a lot of questions for us about how to implement a touchless procedure. So we decided to add a second webinar to discuss the implementation of new processes. Changes in routines and habits can be very difficult. It's something that can be a very big challenge for our shops. Prior to the crisis, shop owners were putting off changes because of the difficulty of it, and they didn't need to do the change at that moment. But now, with new procedures being implemented by the states and the government that things have to be done this way, there's now a new attitude towards these things needing to be done. So when it comes to implementing things, what is the difference between like experimenting and actually implementing? And Craig, I'm going to start off with you in that.
Sure. Thanks, Michael. Yeah, this is one of those time periods where I'm privileged to be able to work with a lot of shops that are already motivated to make changes even prior to this crisis. And we're seeing these shops that'll come on now out of that necessity, as you described. There's no longer a choice. You can't put off some of these things. We need to get some systems in place. And this is where it gets a little challenging. If you're experimenting with some ideals, or new strategies, the success that you're going to have in rolling them out, it's a little bit more of an uphill climb. A lot of shops have already made a decision that this is something that they believe in. This is something they want to be able to offer their customers. So they're a little bit ahead of the curve on that. And this is where we get into that question on really, are you deciding to do this, or are you just sort of testing the waters?
Yeah, I'm going to jump in here, and I think it has a lot to do with the why. We talked about kind of the how and the or the what, how to do it, and kind of what are some things you can do in the touchless process. But the why, and being a shop owner, and of course I own Auto Text Me too, but a lot is driven from, I think that book Start With Why, in your core of what you believe. And even before the touchless process, most shop owners who know me, like my why was to adopt technology and just it's the convenience, it's the perception of convenience to the consumer that drove a lot of my why. And when it's funny, when you drive up to your shop as a consumer and you take off the lens of the owner, then you start to see a lot of the things that you need to improve. And it always drove me crazy as a consumer to come into a shop, drop off my car, and then not know anything about my car for hours and hours and hours. That drove me insane. So a lot of my why was, okay, well, there's things we can do to bridge the gap in communication. And so, we started this journey long time ago in our shops to make sure that we could text message update somebody. So we could send a text to payment link. So we can send a digital inspection, because it's really hard when your service writer only has 30 seconds to explain what blinker fluid is or muffler bearing, because you might as well be talking about those things because your consumer doesn't know. Your average consumer doesn't even know what a wheel bearing is. So I think that knowing your why as far as a shop owner goes, and knowing that once again, I want to use technology to deliver this great experience and bridge this gap in communication. That's a lot of where my why comes from in the touchless process in what we're going through now.
Chris, like really more to your point, a good leader, one of the strongest qualities of any good leader is vision. It's being able to turn a big idea into something that's executable.
Yes.
And really that's what you're talking about is, okay, so right now, I mean, we've got an interesting opportunity where we have to pivot. We have to change what we're doing from what we were doing to the world changed to now what we're going to do. And it's going to be, I mean, our customers, they're concerned with being touchless. They don't want your cooties in their car. as well as your technicians don't want the customers' cooties all over them. And so, and I know I'm making light of it, but really that's one of the things that we now have to deal with in the world, right? It's not going to change probably for a good year, and regardless of how, whatever you believe on the internet that you read or on Facebook that you read, because that's where everybody gets all the awesome news. The thing is that every leader has to have good vision, have to be able to find something to change during this time, because you have to change. Because if you go on doing the exact same things that you were before, and you're going to expect to have some different results, well, that's insanity.
And I'm going to agree, Mark. So it's funny, as a leader, I always say there's two ways that people change and a leader can change. It's through vision or it's through pain. So vision from a leader, that's hard to sell. You got to be passionate about it. You've got to be convicted about it. And the other way is pain. You make people suffer, and if they suffer enough, and the change of the pain is the change is going to alleviate their pain, then they'll change, right, for that easier road if you make that pain hard enough. So I love that you say that. You're absolutely right. The vision of a leader, and that's sometimes really hard to sell. So sometimes as leaders, we have to sell vision and pain all at the same time.
I want to be able to treat our staff as someone who shares our vision. I want true believers in the process, right? What we don't want to do is introduce a new thing that we're going to try out, whatever it is. It could be texting your clients. It could be doing digital inspections for the first time. Doesn't even matter. If you take that thing and you say, hey guys, let's try this out for a little bit. Let's see if this works for us. You're pretty much not even expressing a belief in what we're doing yourself. If you come in and you say, hey, no, guys, this is going to help our sales immensely. It's going to help the bottom line of the business, and we're going to move forward together. Here's how we do it. Totally different reactions you're going to get with the team.
Yeah, confidence, Craig. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, and I agree. And you ripped the Band-Aid off, Craig, and that's what you're saying. Like,
Yep.
If you're going to change your process, make sure that, going back to Mark and what Craig, let's make sure we're we have that conviction. We're going to change it. It's going to happen. This is the vision of what I see for the future of our company. And whether we adopt it now in crisis because the pain we feel because our customers don't want cooties in their car, to Mark's point, but this is an opportunity to present a vision to your team to say, hey, we're going to deal with this moving forward. And guess what? This change we make, it's going to be permanent.
Thank you, guys. Some great insight on those. Now, I know what I want to accomplish with this, right? I do know the process I want. I know what it is I want, but I can't get my team on board with this. So, and I know that's kind of the hardest step is getting my team to adapt to this new process. What are some things I can do to get my team on board with what I am trying to implement? Chris, if you can start us off with that.
I think you lay out the expectations of in front of the team. I think that if this is going to be your vision, then you need to lay out those expectations and then set some goals for your team, and then make sure that you're measuring those goals, right? I think that where most people fail is I love this term, swoop and poop. It's a great management style that most of us use, and I'm going to say great with the dripping sarcasm out of my voice. Swoop and poop says, oh man, I went to this conference. Oh man, I saw this great thing or this widget or process or procedure. Oh my God, it's going to revolutionize our shop. Here it is. Get it done. I'll see you in a couple weeks, with no expectations laid out, no goals laid out, no measurability, no accountability. It's a pure swoop and poop. And we see all the time with digital inspection, I'll bring it up. Oh, it's great. Digital inspection is going to bring us more money. And then they just drop it in the laps of everybody who's already overworked, underpaid, and stressed out. And they say, get it done. And it's like, what? Okay. What am I? Yeah. And then, 2 weeks later, I'm going to go fishing. It's funny. We got a guy who works for us named Scott that says, man, shop owners, we go on vacation a lot. And hey, we go on vacation every once in a while, but he feels like every other week. But it's, hey, I'm going to go out for 2 weeks and go fishing. I'll call you guys when it's back. And then you come back and you're mad because it's not done. Well, where's the digital inspections? It's not done. Swoop and poop. Perfect example.
Mark?
I like it. When you have somebody that's not on board with whatever you're doing, my thing is you have to almost sell. I mean, really, we started in this industry, and we didn't come in not selling anything. You either got trained to sell something, or you were a salesperson. And so many times our people are just customers. There are customers. As a leader in the shop, you have to go and be able to. Well, you got to know who you're selling to, right? So if you don't know your technicians, your service advisors, your bookkeepers, whoever works in your shop, if you don't know them, you're not going to be able to sell to them. And so, one of the things that you have to do is start asking them questions, get into them, understand who they are, what drives them, what motivates them. And then once you know how to motivate them, motivate them. I mean, people, there's only a couple different types of motivation that really work. And whether it's intrinsic or extrinsic, you have to know yourself, because you have to know how to respond to people. I would suggest they have online DISC tests, DISC tests. And I would suggest go online, have all your people do them online, turn in their paperwork, so that way you understand who to talk to. Teach your leadership in your shop how to deal with that. If you have a manager or something to that effect, teach them, how other people react to what they say, and the things that most likely are to motivate them. That it's all about that. I mean, if you work at being a leader, you could be a better leader.
Yeah. One of the things you mentioned too, the personality of the staff you're hiring. One of the best tips on hiring that was ever given was Ray Fisher from ASA back when he was just ASA of Michigan. He said, Craig, the one thing you should be hiring for is initiative. You can't teach it. Someone's either got it or they don't. And it's absolutely true. And it's when you're trying to implement a change in your process and you realize that I can't get my team on board, there's a lot of times it's like you've got a team of people that potentially just have no natural initiative. They're not that champion of your business that really wants to see the business grow. They're there for the paycheck. They're there for the routine, or maybe their ego. Lots of reasons. They need the job. Everyone does need those things, but you want that initiator. I feel like it was one of the best tips ever given to me. It changed my whole hiring practices.
Well, and I think Mark, it's a beautiful point, right? We're salespeople. I think we're selling all the time, and I hate that salespeople got a bad rap, and it's the back in the used cars salesman day that you don't want to be a dirty door-to-door salesperson.
Yeah.
But I think we all are, and part of sales is working through those objections, and I love the way Mark said that, right? And working through that objection is asking questions. There's tricks to a good salesperson. A good salesperson doesn't do a lot of the talking. They actually get you to do the majority of the talking.
Right.
So when your team is you ask them, okay, well, what do you think about digital inspection? What do you think about this? Why do you feel that way? Tell me more about this. And you keep going. And you know what, Craig, you might be right. The value for them might just be in the dollar. And they might be, look, boss, I'm only here for $1. Okay, if that's their motivator and that's the way that they're going to change, and that's the way then unfortunately, I got a lot of people that work for me and they don't work for free. I've tried to get them to work for free, but they always want a paycheck, and it's just so weird. It's just weird. But I think, Mark, that's a great point, that we forget that as leaders, we're still selling. We're selling ideas, we're selling concepts, we're selling procedures, we're selling all these other things. And if we're not good at doing that, and we're just command and control, which is very limited, because as soon as you walk away in command and control, the inmates start running the jail, right?
Minute you turn your back.
Minute you turn your back.
Right.
Yeah. There's weird times too where the touchless process in specific, getting procedures in place, whether it be at the check-in or making appointments or taking payment, whatever it is, if the owner's not already believing on these things, maybe you don't even think you should have to change because this whole thing's blown out of proportion. You bring some attitude into resisting change in these certain times, and you might be finding that, well, your team is the one that does want to change. Maybe you're not. Maybe they are. Maybe it's your clients. some of those things are all going to factor into the getting your team to move along in this. If it's you getting your team or your team getting you, you get.
Uh-oh.
I think we lost Craig.
We lost Craig. Oh, he's back.
I've been trying to do that for a long time.
And that's why.
Craig. Now, one thing though, and when I look at this, and Chris, you brought me up a point here that wants to lead me to something else here about the inmates running the jail. And I can't help but think though, that bringing in some of your employee suggestions for what they need, what they want, what they see, might give you some insight to help you implement this process. Am I wrong in thinking that way?
I'm absolutely, Mike. So I think you lay out here's going to be what we're going to do. Now let's open up for suggestions on how we get there. And you get the buy-in. That's, I think, where you get the buy-in. Buy-ins, it's tricky. Because I love the guys. I love, the guys that work for Auto Text Me. I love the guys that work at Golden Rule. I truly love my employees. But, if I ask the guys at Golden Rule, what do you think the hours during the week should be? It's probably going to be from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. I mean, right? Will my pay get reduced if we only work one day? I'm over exaggerating, but a lot of times as a leader, we have to say, hey, this is best for us. Now, this is the goal. Now, help us get there? And I think that's a lot of time where the buy-in comes. So once again, I'm going to go to texting your customer updates. Hey, how do y'all think we should text them? Should we text them 8 texts versus 2 texts? Should we only send one at check-in and one at ready for pickup? Should we really tell them when their vehicle's being worked on? Because, so you get that input on when you want to communicate, and you'll get a lot of feedback. And I think that's where you can kind of build that better mousetrap. But the buy-in isn't, hey, is everybody okay with texting customers? No, this is what we're going to do. And as a leader, you have to lead your troops and to do those things. I always say this, look, as a leader, you have the ability to lead your ship out into the ocean or steer it into the rocks. And you have to realize that either one of those can happen. You have to be accountable and okay with that, right? But you have to make that decision. You can't, get the buy-in, right? If you say, hey, we're going to set out to sea, everybody go paddle and help me, get out there, but because you can't do it by yourself, but you certainly have to set what we're going to do and then get buy-in once that's set.
That's a good analogy, Chris. Really the thing I've always kind of used the wagon, right? The leader of the shop is pulling the wagon, or of any business really, pulling the wagon. And there's certain people that are in the wagon, and every now and then they got to get out and help push. And sometimes you're like, why are you still in the wagon? Come on, get out of the wagon. Help me push the wagon. We're going up a hill. I need you right now. And so, you need to make sure that your people understand that, the wagon is also their responsibility, not just yours. And if you're going to get better and you've decided as the leader, the guy pulling the wagon, we're going this direction. Okay, well, everybody else, you need to be on that. I'll sell it to you. I want you to feel like it's part of yours too, because it's still your wagon to push whenever, I'm not here. Somebody's got to help go with the wagon, right? Somebody's got to stand up into the pulling position. But it's the same concept of driving the boat, are you going on the waves or on the rocks? It's the same thing. You've got a whole bunch of people that are there trying to help you with stuff. And I mean, really, it's like, if you go to I have small kids, right? I have 7 and 8 year old, and they're picky eaters. And so if you give them the direction of, hey, do you want to eat that for dinner tonight, or we're eating this for dinner tonight? So and different days it calls for different things. And with my son, I can absolutely be like, you're eating this. With my daughter, I got to sell it to her. And everybody's led a little differently. And so that's just really, how we have to do it is understand who you're talking to, understand what their motivation is. I mean, take a note, get a notepad out, write everything down about people. Oh, this is this is that. I mean, it's that important to be that much in tune with your team.
And I love the wagon analogy. And Mike, I think part of what you have to do is, say get out, push. But then, you can't get mad when, Craig's inside of the wagon. He says, hey, I can make it more aerodynamic by cutting holes in the tarp. Of course, when it's cold at night, everybody's mad at Craig, but he didn't burn down the wagon. And then you can't get mad at, Scott when he says, hey, what I really think is going to be great is let's paint the wagon, multiple colors of reds and greens and blues. Now, when the Indians are shooting arrows at you now because you stick out like a sore thumb, it's probably a bad idea. Maybe it's a bad idea, but maybe it's not. Maybe they were like, hey, we really like this wagon. So you got to let them, I guess, extenuate the wagon. You've got to let them make the changes to the wagon, but still the wagon's got to move forward. Yeah. It's got to make it to Montana or California, the hills of gold, right? I would love this in leadership, let them do whatever they need to do and give them the autonomy to do it without burning down the house.
The
so
autonomy.
Somebody don't want to set if somebody says, hey, I think it's really great if we just set the wagon on fire right now because it's cold. Well, yeah, it's probably a bad idea, right?
Right.
You have to allow for that autonomy.
As you all know, I've used your software quite a bit. I've liked it. I mean, in my past, I would go into different shops and help them implement some things to change. And I mean, that was really my claim to fame, was going into shops, figuring out what's broken, helping them fix it. And a lot of times I would try to implement a 300% rule, which was 100% of the cars that come in get an inspection. You make sure you estimate everything that's on there, and then you present it. And your software does a good job of forcing that. But what's also really cool is when you're implementing anything, you can change how things go. And what I used to always do was grab, the top tech or the couple top techs, maybe the best advisor, whatever, and I would make sure that the inspection process was the same as how they would do it, so it made their job easier. And so instead of making it, okay, it's all about here's this extra thing to do. No, we're not going to do extra stuff. We're going to do this, and it's going to be easier, and you're going to make more sales. And once you turn more hours, you're going to make more money, right? And so like it's all about however you frame it, right?
So, Mark, I know Craig wants to jump in and talk, and the thing is, we're getting super confident with talking with each other. So, it's funny, when we started our digital inspection at the first shop, it started out with 10 points. These were the 10 things that had to be on there. They didn't want anything more and anything less. It was just going to be 10, and it was agreed upon. But I'm like, hey, we're going to do this. We're going to do an inspection. 10 points. That's fine. And that thing has grown to over 100 things, because every, a couple weeks later, it was like, oh, we need 5 more. Oh, well, this isn't on there, so we need to add this. So as they got more comfortable with it, it grew and grew and grew. And I was listening to their feedback, and we continued. But it was, hey, let's do this. This is going to happen. And then, as you said, it grew. Hey, yeah, we like this, and we like this. So well put point.
Chris, you jumped on it. You said it.
Yeah.
You listened to them. That was
Craig.
That's the thing.
Craig, I would love to hear your insight on this, please.
You've got to start simple. They're hitting all on it. You have to start simple on this stuff. It's overwhelming, especially for your implementer in many circumstances. It doesn't matter if you have 1 store or 5 or 10 or 20. When you give something to the person that's in charge of this stuff, pushing a wagon isn't already in their mindset. They're fixing cars. And if this doesn't overlay into the process relatively seamlessly, you're going to hit some barriers. So the simpler you can do that, and like Mark was saying, you want to have that conversation, figure out what their inspection process looks like right now. That should be well understood and hopefully documented anyways, and build the digital form for example. And that's just dealing with the inspection side of things. We keep going back to that point as the a frequent area where changing is very difficult, going from paper to anything. But I think the reason we're doing this in this conversation is because the fact that digital inspections are a way that you share that with the client without them having to touch the piece of paper.
Or be 6 feet close to you, Craig. You got to be close when you give them that piece of paper.
Right. Text it.
With digital inspection, you don't have to be next to you.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. Absolutely.
And one thing now is with waiting rooms, I know for the most part, waiting rooms are closed. You can only drop off your vehicle. You cannot wait anymore. So you can't just walk a paper inspection over to a customer and show them it.
Excellent.
Because they are not in the shops right now. They are at home.
The positive side is there's no pressure from a waiter in that lobby. You have more time to focus on every car in your shop without that added stress.
It kind of leads to another thing though, and we talk about this with implementation and how are we going to implement these new processes. And I know national averages right now is business is down. We are slower and we're not seeing as many customers come in as we were a month ago, a month and a half ago. Does anyone see this as a good time to work on these processes? Mark, I'm going to start with you. What should shops be utilizing in this time, that whether they're maybe even being forced to close for a time being, or they're seeing a massive decrease in the amount of work coming in? How can they use this time to benefit what's going to happen to them going forward?
So one of the theories that I subscribe to a lot, and I talk about in just about every class that I teach, is the sharpen the saw, right? Stephen Covey, it's the 7th habit of the highly effective people, and it's taking that time to get better. And whether it's, whether it's taking time to do some training, whether it's taking some time to shore up your processes and get your procedures right. And I mean, it's a very real thing that the staffing level that you had at your shop could change and be smaller. I mean, it could. When business levels go down, you have to be a good steward of your business. And if you're going through and spending a lot more money on staff, well, number one, they don't want to work there because they're not getting as many hours as they used to. And so their wages are lower. And so maybe you are changing that. Well, if you have better processes and better procedures, maybe you're then able to take an extra customer, even with a lower amount of staff. And you never knew that before now. And maybe you have some other things that are going to help you make some better sales. Making better sales, meaning your average repair order going up because you're doing some of the right things. You're actually doing the 300% rule, right? Where you're inspecting all the cars that come in, and you're actually sending somebody an estimate. And you're actually giving them, the results of what your inspection was. Well, that's great. Yeah, you should do that, because right now the world's different. I mean, the world is just different. And so, we as leaders in this industry have to be different and have to be better, have to be just better. In hard times, strong leaders, good leaders are really what the best thing to have during that. And in fact, hard times make better leaders. So this is the time when you can go and be a better leader, because we got some hard times. You got to make some hard decisions. You got to communicate a lot better. And that's really, that's the best thing you can, any advice I can give you is, of course, know yourself, know your people, ask your people what they need, but accept the feedback. And if you can't get over yourself and accept the feedback, you're going to be in trouble. So that's a change that you need to make for yourself, not just how your people are out there.
Anytime you're in a crisis, you're going to default to your primary habits.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime the shop gets overloaded, the base level of your performance tendencies are going to surface. When you're overwhelmed, those things that you can still accomplish are those things that are well structured. And what I see, especially with newer stores that are onboarding any touchless processes, occasionally, even now, they'll get a burst of vehicles and they default to car broke, we fix. And they just focus narrowly on that one thing, and all sorts of things get left out of that equation, right? If you're finding that even when the shop is quiet and slow or anything else, that implementation of new strategies is faltering, it's not implemented. It's not implemented yet. And that's time to really double down and focus on those things and point that out. And as the leaders, it's our responsibility to really call that out when it happens. It doesn't always feel good. It's already stressful and you're going to want to do it tactfully. But you got to call it out when it's happening. Break those habits.
And you know, there's that, it's actually, I think it's 62 days or 63 days to create a habit. It's not the 30 that people
Right.
say. If you go
Right.
look, and that's what Google tells me, at least, and Google's got to be right. But I think that you probably have a month or two. I think by the time, June, July comes around, shops are going to be a lot busier. We're picking up now, and when the summer hits and the sun's out, especially, not to get scientific on this, but they're saying that, it just, sunlight kills it, like most viruses. Sunlight and outside, it has a shorter lifespan. So when the summer comes around, and especially in the southern states, but pretty much all over, US, things are going to get hotter. People are going to get out and they're going to want their ACs fixed. So I think now is like a perfect time to start creating those good habits and enforcing those habits and holding everybody accountable. Because Craig's absolutely right. When stuff hits the fan, man, everybody reverts back to, what is it? Car fix, car broken, me fix. I love that. It's caveman. It's raw. It's real. So create those good habits now. This is all about leadership. Take this time to say, man, things are hard. We can go step up, put in a great process into place. That way, when things turn over, we're in a good position.
Yeah. Yeah. If you don't do it now, it's only going to be more crazy, and you're going to resort even further to those base habits once we get back on track again. And that's the track you're going to be running on for a good long while.
A lot of shops are just not going to survive this, right? And we say this, that a lot of businesses that were just holding on, unfortunately, after weeks being shut down or living on life support, just aren't going to. So you should be, if you're one of the lucky ones to survive, you see it as a blessing and use it to your advantage. In my opinion, strike it, turn up the heat in your shop, and make sure if this happens again in another 8 years that you're fine.
Yeah.
Right.
When we talk about making sure, we make sure that things are happening. We can implement the new process. We have the time. We can put the procedures in place. But there has to be a way for us to hold our staff accountable for what we want them to be doing. And without the accountability side of this, it kind of all goes for naught. What type of things, Craig, can we do to hold our staff accountable? How can we track this? How can we make sure that the procedures we want in place and that we initially taught are actually being followed through with on a daily basis?
Yeah, this is my realm, and this is where a touchless process that's done with digital components. Nice thing whenever you're using anything digitally is you have reports. You have just fantastic reporting on every click in our system. We can see what's happening to a large extent. How many pictures are being done per inspection? How many issues are being found on each vehicle? All of those things start to become measurable, and we can actually see how diligent our team is performing. Text messages. People talk about text messages all the time about how much more convenient it is, but what about what a CYOA it is for the shop too? Text threads are stored and time-stamped, and every other component on here too. We know what's happening, when it's happening, even have a live feed in the software so shop owners can have a perfect window of how one or more of their locations they're all performing according to the process and the procedures that we've laid out. If you aren't measuring it, you're certainly not going to be able to manage it. And this is something that you absolutely must learn to utilize. Digital reporting.
Chris, please, what are your...
I am a spreadsheet guy, so I have lots of spreadsheets, and specifically Google Docs. I use Google Docs religiously, even though Google's evil. Them and Apple want to track everybody, but unfortunately they've got my business. Don't want to get political here, but I just threw that political jab in. If my screen squeezes right now and all my Google Docs are gone tomorrow, y'all will know why. Well, I love spreadsheets, right? And I love creating the column, and I love, I use reds and greens. It's something I got from Hunter. So I'll create a report and I'll say, if I want shop A to do 90% plus of the vehicles that come in, digital inspections need to be completed. That's an easy number for me to come up with. Look at the number of cars, look at the number of inspections, do my division, and then it's either red or green, and I go to my managers and I go, it's red. Why? It's green. Great. You guys are doing awesome. If it's red, then tell me why. And hopefully there's a good reason there. And if not, then the manager's going to go, they're going to talk in circles, and I'm going to say, no, I mean, it's red. So the right answer is next week it'll be green, right? That's the right answer, because it should never be red unless you somehow have justified that this car came in, for 5 times in one day because we couldn't get it right. Then I get it. We didn't keep re-inspecting it. So every once in a while you have some anomaly, but for the most part, that's to me an easy way to measure this, right? Come up with a spreadsheet, come up with some easy metrics. How many inspections on vehicles do you want done? How many text messages do you want done? Red or green, did you hit your goal? If not, have the discussion of why. If they say, I was too busy, I mean, that's not an excuse right now.
It still comes up.
Yeah, possibly. If there's one guy in the shop doing everything, maybe they are too busy.
That's the reason. Yeah.
But to Mark's point earlier, if they're too busy, then you need to find out what they're busy doing.
Yeah.
And maybe that person needs help, or maybe that person's doing a lot of busy work that they shouldn't be doing. You need to find out why they're busy and correct that problem. So once again, these spreadsheets.
Awesome point, Chris. I mean, one of the things that we at RLO teach, we have a class that we do. It's technician time management, and it's all of that. It's understanding how to keep your technicians and understand what your technicians are doing during the day. There's a whole process in how to do that. So that way your effective labor rate, you can watch that. And there's a lot that goes into it, and it's all about, inspecting what you expect, or if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. Like all those things that are almost cliche terms that we hear of now, but it's true, isn't it? I mean,
True.
It's the things where, your SOPs never hurt you. It's always the people not implementing your SOPs. And if you can't measure and manage your stuff, you're never going to be able to, actually do it. So, or actually manage it. So if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And it's true. It's all about accountability, and that's what good leaders do. Is you draw a line, you make a bar, and people have to be above the bar. And when they're not, that's the definition of a good leader, is when they're not what you do. Any leader can go out and make a benchmark. I mean, you can make to Chris's point, you can make a spreadsheet and be, okay, this is my benchmark, and then if people don't hit it, that's where you need to go through it. And you need to understand, again, who it is that you have in your shop, who you are, how those things will mesh, how to best go and sell to your people that your way is right.
Yeah, I had a good example of and I'm embarrassed to admit this, but when we first started sending out inspections via text message, the second shop, man, they were killing it. They were doing, 50, 60. And a lot of times when we set these benchmarks, I'll ask the shop managers, what do you think you can do? And they said, okay, well, here's based off of, the results. Here's our new benchmark. And it was 20%. And, this other shop was doing 50, 60, 70%. And I kept looking and saying, guys, why? Well, then I found out by asking the questions why we weren't doing things like texting the customer when they were in the waiting room, because they didn't think that was important. They didn't think that was needed, because they're sitting in the waiting room. So I'm just going to talk to them about it. They don't need a text message of it. Whereas the other shop was, they were texting pretty much everything, whether they were sitting in the showroom or not. And so just that simple questioning and setting that benchmark, and now, to take those benchmarks up. But, and then if they drop down below, then I ask, why, and then what are we going to do to correct it? And so just my own personal story that I had to deal with. What you said
in there was pretty clear. The advisors in that case didn't think it was important.
And then we had to explain to them why it was important. Yep.
Right. Yeah. So that's the answer. That's the answer, is clarity, right? Communication. That's what a leader does anywhere, and that's, of course, what we're talking about this whole week is leadership, right? Well, I mean, anyone that has anybody that works for them, that you have to lead them down their path.
Yeah.
To Chris's point earlier, they'll come in and let's work 1 day a week for 1 hour and that's it. Well, obviously you have to lead them that's not right.
Absolutely.
No, not everything is self-evident to everybody in the business. it became obvious to you that you wanted to do this thing, and you assume it's obvious for everybody else, but it's just simply not. And if you do not enforce the actual implementation of this, well, your crew begins to understand, and it is self-evident to them that you really don't care.
Agreed.
Very good. Now, guys, I'm going to lead you guys off right now. Before we get to the questions, does anyone have any closing statements they would like to make about the topic?
I will. I'm going to say this, that, leadership's hard. Leadership is a journey. It's funny. Mark was talking about, training, and I believe that training is just, it's crucial and critical to everything we do. And I think as a leader, like, you need to be the one who's training 60 hours, 80 hours, 100 hours a year, and leading the way to show your shop that you're training on leadership, or you're training on management, or you're training on, and then when you ask them to do the 20 hours of training or do this or invest in this, then I think it's a lot easier for them to turn around and do that. But it was best put to me by another trainer, and he said, Chris, you're never going to get a certificate for leadership. They just don't exist, because it's a never ending path. It's something that you always have to work on, and you're always improving. And that, I think there was a lot of good tips out here, accountability. You hear it all the time, and then it's just up to you to start putting it into place. Are you the leader that you want to be, for the shop or for your business and for your people? Because everybody looks to you, and especially now, I have a couple people that, look to me, and sometimes it's tough, but I'm happy to be where I'm at.
Mark, any last thoughts?
Really to the same point that we've been really saying is, a leadership is vision. Everything about leadership is motivation. And, if you're going to motivate your people to succeed, you got to know yourself, you got to know your people, and you got to give them what they want, ask them what they need, so you can give them what they want. And most importantly, you got to be able to accept any kind of feedback that you're going to get, positive, negative, whatever, and then be able to deal with it as an adult. So that's all I have.
I want to add on to Mark's. I love the John Maxwell quote. It says, a man who has nobody following him is just taking a walk.
Great quote. It's a great quote. Craig, do you got anything to close with?
If you fail to encourage your team, you're going to be surrounded by discouraged people. That's it.
Nice and simple. That is a short, simple answer from Craig.
Weird.
I know, right? All right, guys, I'm going to get to the questions here in 1 second, but first I am going to share our poll results. So we had when did you begin to apply touchless strategies to your process? And right now, the leading answer was March with 43%. And have you ever had a key employee refuse to make a change? And the leading result was no at 71%. And to your knowledge, who is interested in a touchless process in your shop? And now this was a multiple choice, but the leading result was a tie between my clients, my sales staff, and the owner, but all at 57%. And the last question.
How those numbers work?
It was a multiple, because there were multiple.
Oh, okay.
It's math. Just go with it.
Haven't you taught? You have young kids. You know new math. You should be learning new math now.
Lots of crying heads on the desk for sure.
You've been learning your All right. What kind of changes are you making in your shop? Again, another multiple choice one, Mark. So we've got the leading result on that one was 86% appointments. And that one was followed closely by customer check-in. So those were our poll results. I'd like to thank everyone for participating in our polls. And now I'm going to go ahead and get into some more questions. The first question we had is, I have one employee who refuses to adapt. How do I get them to? I'm going to lead off with Craig on that one.
Just one?
Just one employee. Everyone else did good.
So, with an employee that's been there a long time. So the one thing just related to this, and maybe this will help, maybe this won't. I actually hired 2 apprentices at the time when I was onboarding a new system. In this time period, this probably doesn't apply as much, but I actually made those apprentices the experts in the system first, made sure they understood it. And I encouraged them to master this, not during shop time, but even in their own time after hours. And that might work as well for this one individual. He's not wanting to adapt. It's a lot of times it's just because they don't, honest to goodness, have the time during their busy workday. And you do have to be sensitive to the fact that daytime training, and it does take training to implement a new process, it is very hard. And it is going to make people feel inefficient and non-productive. In order to combat that, it's called homework. You can send links on training. There's nothing you cannot learn through some other alternatives other than right there on the job.
Thank you. Chris.
Fire them.
Knew it was coming.
I would never, I never do that. That's pain. Let's just say, I'm going to throw that out there as the mean shop owner. That's one option. And I'll let Mark finish with his option, but there's always that option, right?
It is an option.
You're not wrong.
Definitely is an
Option.
option.
I'm not saying it's a good option. I'm not saying it's a bad option, but maybe that one person doesn't want to change. Maybe maybe look at their past, and maybe they don't want to change at all ever.
There's you know, in that cart, in that wagon that you're pulling, there is sometimes somebody that's hanging onto the back, leaning backwards with their digging their heels in, and maybe that is the guy you fire. You know, when as you and everybody else is pushing that wagon up the hill, he's trying to make it more challenging for you to do it. And if that's the case, then maybe that's the case. He's not part of your culture. He wouldn't be on my team.
Yeah. No, I think that's a fair point. In a lot of shops, when they do finally let a guy go that is like that, they're just like, wow, it feels a lot better. This thing.
Oh my gosh, it's better here. Like,
so much lighter. The wagon moves so much better in hell.
But you know, the thing is that if you have somebody that does it, they don't want to adapt to it, they don't want to get into it, they don't want to be there. First, I would start with trying to figure out if maybe they can, and they just don't see what your vision is.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of times it's explaining what your vision is, go starting with the why, right? And then going back to the what and saying, this is what, because of this why. So here's how I got here. And so you're explaining this again, selling it to that person that isn't on board, and then asking them for their help, being the vulnerable person. You know, that you're opening up some empathy, and now they can have the opportunity to help you. But then really let them own it. You know, the 5 basic things that if you want to have a happy employee, and I did a video about it, you could find it on, I think, our Facebook page. But you know, I draw a little stick figure, right? You know, you have to stimulate somebody's brain. You have to pay them well. I circle the stomach. You got to pay them well. They got to eat. They have to use their hands and feel like they're able to do their job without being micromanaged. They have to you circle their feet, and they got to feel like they're going somewhere. And then the last thing is you got to love them. And if you do all those things, you will have happy employees that do everything you ask.
That's great, Mark. That's a great, and we can all draw stick figures. So
Well,
I'm going to go look up your video. That's awesome.
Do it. It's on our page.
That's awesome.
Then we have another question here. It's, our office is still open, but limited to only 3 waiting customers. Many customers fail to read any of the bright orange signs we put up and walk to the counter like any other day. My staff is freaking out about it, but at the same time, we do not want to scare the customers away. How successful are stores that have gone completely no contact? And Mark, I'm going to let you kick that one off.
So, you know, again, whatever your process is the leader, you know, I mean, and the leader has to decide what level of, you know, if you're having 0 customers in the building, 2 customers, 3 customers, 1, whatever, it doesn't matter. You have to come up with whatever that answer is. And it has to be an answer that everybody understands. And when you have that answer, it has to be empathetic to your customer. Always make it about your customer. Because if you make it about your employees and you teach the employees to make it sound like it's about the employees, you're going to turn off your customers and they're going to go somewhere else. Maybe not this time, but maybe next time. because you weren't empathetic to them.
Mm-hmm.
So I would absolutely make it about your customers, have a canned statement where everybody knows the answer, and a good way to do it. I mean, it'll be repetition. Once they say it enough, once your advisor will say it enough times, it'll be all right. I mean, it'll happen. And I mean, the truth is that you got to make a decision. I mean, nobody can help, whoever wrote that out without them being able to make a decision. I can't tell you what. I can't. I can tell you that the why is that your customers need to understand that you love them. Your people need to understand that you love them. And if you can do those things, well, then that'd be the way I'd do it.
Michael, actually shut down both our showrooms a week and a half ago, and I had a couple decisions that I had to make. And one was I need to keep my people, healthy. But the struggle was, but people really, this is one place they can go is in the auto repair shop, and they can go into the showroom and they can talk to my guys. So yeah, I sacrificed one for the other, and I decided, you know what, let's shut them down. It's the right thing to do. You can't come in the showrooms. I told them, but be empathetic. If it's raining outside and it's cold and they don't have a ride, let them come wait a couple minutes. Like, don't be, soup, Nazi and no soup for you. Like understand that there's rules, but you can be still a person and still be okay with that. And so once we did, interestingly enough, it didn't really hurt business much at all. And actually a lot of people started going, wow, we really appreciate that you've done this. And then the interesting thing was some of the spouses said, wow, I'm so glad that y'all did this, because I was really worried about the contact that, my husband or my significant other was having, during, all this going on. So I think, so it was kind of a chain reaction that I think not only, were the employees, of course, they weren't going to say, yeah, we're tough. We rub some dirt in it.
Right.
But I think they kind of, were okay with it, and the spouses, I think, definitely were okay with it, and customers, it's just the normal. It's the new normal. Now, in a couple of weeks from now, when they say, hey, you can go back in a movie theater and you can seat 6 feet apart, will we probably adjust? Yeah, we probably will. I'll probably allow a couple people in at a time, because I do like that interaction. I think that's where most shops, that's where we know a lot of the relationship is built, is with that customer waiting in that waiting room, and your service advisor getting to know their kids and getting to know their wife, and then that sell becomes more of that value proposition, because they become a consultant, they become a peer versus just a salesperson they don't know. So my experience, shut it down. It was the right thing to do, and it just didn't hurt business the way I thought it would.
Look, I see real quick, there's a couple points that were brought up in that question. Customers failed to read the sign, staff freaking out. That tells me the staff is concerned about the illness that they could get, and that could be for a variety of reasons. And you do need to be sensitive to that, obviously. The customers might be sensitive to that too, but they aren't paying attention to signs. There was orange signs and everything else over there. So this is a process failure in this particular case. Call that what it is. What we need to be able to do is train our clients by setting the expectations before that appointment. And how's that being done? If that counter staff has been really relying on that sign to tell them everything they need to know, that's why they're freaking out right now. There's absolutely no way that somebody's going to show up at an automotive repair facility and learn everything they need to know about how this visit is going to go from a sign on the door. You can text them, you can talk to them on the phone, and you have to get your team on the same process for setting that expectation when that appointment is made. That customer should know before they arrive at the shop how that visit's going to go.
Would be
Over
nice if we
communicate.
had a feature that would let them text the appointment information prior to the appointment.
We used an example from last video where someone had a video in that text message to their YouTube channel, and it showed exactly how their drop-off procedure worked. People will click a link and watch a video a heck of a lot better than they're going to read a sign taped to a door.
I agree. That's really good points, Craig. Really good points. The last question I've got in here is, I'm particularly interested in the touchless process idea. I have been approached by a vendor who wants to create a web portal where I can receive payments via our website. What are your opinions on that type of procedure? And I will start this one off with Mr. Cloutier.
Heck yeah, text to pay, touchless, take a credit card. I'm a fan. I'm a fan of anything that, once again, you don't have to touch a credit card. Just convenience. Once again, before all this went down, what's part of our why is I want the customer to think that this whole process is super convenient. It's funny. So I asked this question. I used to ask it all the time. What's more convenient, Walmart or Amazon? And most people would go, well, Amazon. And I'd say, well, I don't know. Your definition of convenience was driven by 7-Eleven. There's convenience store. I can charge you $3 to go get milk now versus going to a grocery store where you can pay $1.25. And that was convenient, right? So Amazon, you don't really get things now. So actually Walmart is more convenient because you can go right there and get it. But the thing that makes Amazon convenient is the perception of convenience. I can order it in my underwear at 4 a.m. You can go to Walmart at 4 a.m. too, but I would rather order things off of Amazon at 4 a.m. Yeah, I might get it in a day or two, and now it might take 3 or 4 days. So they sold a perception of convenience. And I think a lot of times that we forget that as shop owners, that we have to sell that perception. The perception is, hey, if I make it very easy for you to drop off your car or come pick up your car, and then I send you text message updates, and then at the end, I send you a payment link, and you don't have to see me, that has taken a lot of pain out of my day of what I thought was going to be a huge inconvenience because my car needs repair, to this idea of convenience. So I'm all about text to pay. Anything you can do to enable somebody to, once again, have that perception of convenience. Because when they're on Amazon, Amazon's not saying, hey, could you call us up over the phone and wait for 5 minutes to take your credit card? No. You have it, man, you're one clicking things. You don't even have to put in your credit card number, right? It's click, click, click. I'm a fan, yes.
Great. And you know what, guys, I'm actually going to, I think we're hitting right on our end of our session here. So I'd like to thank everyone in our panel. I'd like to thank everyone who joined us today to watch and be on the lookout. I'm sure we will be doing some more of these webinar series. Again, Mark, thank you very much for joining us. Your insight has been wonderful. Craig and Chris, again, thank you guys. I do enjoy having you guys on to do these panels. And everybody, please enjoy, have a great day, and be safe out there. Thank you very much.
We'll see you guys.
You guys there. Thanks a bunch.